Hello everybody and welcome to the video notes for Unit 4, Day 16. And today we're going to be practicing factoring expressions, which is kind of like the opposite of the distributive property. Today's video is dedicated to Angel Valencia in 6B. Hi Angel. You can start by checking your work for this greatest common factor exercise. The greatest common factor between 9 and 15 was 3. And the greatest common factors between 30 and 45 was 15. Continuing with factors, here it's asking us to list all the factors of 12x. So this example is a little bit different because now we have a variable. But we can still just think through what are all the things that we could divide into 12x, or what are all the numbers or variables that you can use to multiply up to 12x. So first we can start with 1, because 1 is always a factor of any number, because we can divide it by 1. And if we divide 12 by 1, we get 12. So I'm going to put 12 at the end here, because I know that 12 is also a factor, because 1 times 12 gets us to 12. 12 is an even number, so I know that 2 also works. 12 divided by 2 is 6, or 2 times what gets us to 12? 6 does. So I know that 6 is also going to be a factor. I think to myself, what else can I divide into 12? After 2 is 3. Can I divide 3 into 12? Yes, I can. And 12 divided by 3 is 4, or 3 times 4 gets us to 12. So 4 is also a factor. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 are the factors of 12x. But in addition to all these numbers, another factor is the variable itself, x. Because any of these numbers you can multiply with x to multiply up to 12x. Or you can also divide x into 12x, because 12x is the same thing as 12 times x. So the variable is always a factor too when you have a term like this with a coefficient and a variable. Let's keep that in mind as we do the rest of this activity. So far, we've been working starting with factored form, where we have a number outside the parentheses, right, and then we multiply the number with each of the terms inside the parentheses, and then we get to expanded form like this, a times b plus a times c. So far, we've just been going this way, going from factored form to expanded form. But what we're going to do today is we're going to have terms that are already in expanded form like this, and we're actually going to try to go the other way and then try to fill out the blanks of factored form. So we're going to have something times, and then parentheses, something plus something else. So today we're starting with this and going the other way into factored form. This is called factored form. When we're working with factored form, this number that's outside the parentheses, in this case it's this variable a, I want you to draw an arrow there, and I want you to write, that is going to be our GCF, for greatest common factor. So whatever number or whatever term is outside the parentheses, that's our greatest common factor. Here's what that looks like. Check out our expanded form here. We have 3f plus 3g. These are our two terms. And to put it into factored form, we have to figure out what is the greatest common factor between 3f and 3g. So one way you can do this is to write out these two terms, 3f and 3g. Now, the factors of 3f, 1 is always a factor, and 1 times 3 gets you to 3, so 3 is a factor. There's no other numbers that I can divide evenly into 3, so these are all the numbers, and then don't forget, the variable itself is always a factor too, because you can divide the variable into 3f. So 1, 3, and f are the factors of 3f. For 3g, it's going to be the same thing except for 1, 3, and g is also a factor of 3 times g. And the greatest common factor, I look between these two lists. Well, I have a 3 here, and a 3 here. Those are the largest of the common factors, so my greatest common factor is 3. Now, since I know that the greatest common factor is what goes outside the parentheses, I can put 3 on the outside. And now I know that if 3 times this number is going to be equal to 3f, right? 3 times this blank is going to be equal to 3f right there. So 3 times what gets me to 3f? 3 times f. And then 3 times the second term is going to get me to this term right here, the 3g. So I think to myself, 3 times what equals 3g? 3 times g equals 3g. And so now 3 times the sum of f plus g equals 3f plus 3g. Now I just went backwards and went from expanded form into factored form. Here is my answer right here. Okay. I know that might be a little bit tricky, but we're going to get a lot more practice, so you just got to stick with it. Let's do another one all together. This one, it's 6x plus 9y. We're going to put that into factored form. So we know that our final answer is going to be the greatest common factor here, and then in parentheses, something plus something. So we have to figure out what is the greatest common factor between 6x and 9y. Let's write it out. 6x, 9y. The factors of 6x, let's do that first. 1 is always a factor, and 1 times 6 gets us to 6x. So we have to put 6 on the outside here. 6 is an even number, so I can divide it by 2. And 2 times what gets you to 6? 3. So 1, 2, 3, 6 are all the numbers that are factors of 6x, and the variable itself is also a factor. Let's do 9y. 1 is always a factor. 9 divided by 1 is 9, so we're going to have 9. And 3, I can divide 3 into 9. All right, and then y, the variable, is also always a factor. So I check my two factors list. What is the greatest common factor? Well, I have a 3 here and a 3 there. I think that's it. So 3 is going to be my greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor, right, the GCF, always goes right here. So 3 is the outside of the parentheses. And I know that whatever's here is going to equal 6x plus 9y. So for the first term, 6x is going to be 3 times whatever is in this first blank. So I think to myself, 3 times what gets me to 6x? Well, 3 times 2 gets me to 6, but I also need an x here. So it's going to be 3 times 2x equals 6x. Then for the next one, I know it's going to be 9y from here. So I think to myself, 3 times what gets me to 9y? Well, to get to 9, 3 times 3 gets me to 9, so I know I'm going to have a 3. But there's also a y here. So I need 3 times 3y in order to get me to 9y. So then this is going to be my answer here. 3 times the sum of 2x plus 3y gets me to 6x plus 9y. Here it is in factored form. Okay. Now, let's look at this one here, 3c plus 11c. We know that we have two terms, and we want to figure out what is the greatest common factor between these two terms. So we have 3c and 11c. the factors of 3c, 1 is always a factor. 1 times 3 gets me to 3. And then the variable itself is also a factor, c. For 11c, 1 is a factor. 1 times 11 gets me to 11, so 11 itself is a factor. No other numbers can go into 11 evenly. And then the variable c is also a factor. So in this case, the greatest common factor is actually the variable, because there's 1, but then no bigger number than 1, so it's actually going to be c. c is the greatest common factor. So that means in factored form, we're going to have c on the outside, and then in parentheses, we figure out what goes in the blanks. So c times what is going to get you to 3c, and then c times the second blank is going to get you to 11c. Here and here. So c times what gets you to 3c, c times what here gets you to 11c. I'm not going to fill this in because I think you can do this on your own. And then what I want you to do is to also try this last one on your own as well. The secret word today is dot, D-O-T, like a small dot, a circle, a dot. That's the secret word. Okay. So when you are done with this last one, raise your hand, get a check from me, and then you can get your raffle ticket.